The Dare County Board of Commissioners welcomes everyone to our Wednesday, May 13th meeting held in the Dare County Board of Commissioners room so that it can be live streamed. There will be no public comment today. However, I do want to introduce our newest board member, Judy Lotus, who replaced Virginia Tillett, and this is her first in-person meeting with the full board. First, we'll have approval of minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the April 28th phone meeting?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Go ahead.
28th through the 9th.
Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? There are two other sets of minutes that have been approved, but because we were meeting by phone, we did not get an opportunity to sign those. Michelle will pass around the final in a little bit, and we can sign those and be done with them. We'll have the director's report.
Okay, our office is running as usual, except the county offices are closed to the public at this time. We have registrations coming in, a few absentee ballot requests have come in, and the phones have been relatively quiet. Some people have called about the registration or absentee ballot requests and such, but things are going smoothly.
Next, we're going to have the 2020 election plan update. There's a subcommittee made up of James Cofield, Jim Clark, and Ken Buchanan, and they're working on drafting a plan for this election, which is a humongous task. Judy Lotus and I will take care of the media and messaging and placing ads that are needed for this. James, would you like to start with the plan where y'all are?
I'm happy to say we've had a number of conversations to date. And we being Jim Clark and Ken Buchanan and I, and our responsibility is to look at and formulate an operational plan and logistics plan for the November election, which also says the same thing for the early voting. Our underlying assumption from a planning standpoint is that we are planning for the worst. We are hoping for the best. And the worst case being that we are faced with the coronavirus limitations that we had a couple of weeks ago, which limits a number of things. We want the voters to feel comfortable, to create a comfortable environment, and the staff and poll workers. So the first phase of what we're doing is we're looking at a layout of each of the 16 precincts in Dare County. We've completed about six of them, and a rough. We also think just going forward that we need here in the Board of Elections this kind of information, period, and we didn't have it previously. So we've gone out. We're completing this, taking photos of each of the precincts so we can form some intelligent judgment about the adequacy of each of the precincts. We've not made any judgments to date, and that's down the road. We've not made any judgments, we've not formed any conclusions. And when we begin to form conclusions, we'll come back and report to the board, and the board can take whatever action is necessary. In addition to the precincts, we are looking at alternative locations, the schools, and so that's underway. That, in a nutshell, is our plan, and we're meeting and we're going forward. We'll begin to look at, in the weeks ahead, what types of procedures, what do we need to implement in each and all of the precincts to keep the voters safe, to keep the poll workers safe. And so our planning is underway. Jim and Ken might want to comment further.
Okay. In addition to sending the notice out to media and interested people, we also sent this out to all of our poll workers that were on the list. I think there were more than 100 of them that we used during the last election. And we're hoping that they view this. And as they hear the discussions today, I'm sure that they may have some suggestions or comments that they would like to make. And before the meeting is over, we will try to set a date and a method for doing that. It will probably have to be by phone, but the poll workers know their polls and they know things that may not even occur to us. So we really value that input and hope that they will be an active part of trying to put together a successful election under incredible circumstances. We had invited 3 people to attend today, and they weren't able to ask health questions and to gain some ideas of things that we might want to do or consider. Right now, we're in a very strange place because this is the time of year we start planning elections, and it's not that far down the road when we start calling poll workers, but there are a lot of things up in the air. One of those are requests that have been made to the legislature about changes that they would like to see under the circumstances. And asked for a little more than $2 million that's needed for matching the federal funds that have been made available. If the legislature decides not to provide that $2 million, then the cost of all of the additional work and items that we'll need for the election falls to the local boards, and then the state will use that total for the matching funds. So at this point, we have no idea what to look for, how much gear that we're going to be provided by the state. We don't know what rules might change with absentee balloting. And then after that work is done, then it has to go back to the State Board of Elections for them to make some determination and set out some guidance. We received notice last week that they don't expect to have that guidance ready until August. To try to prepare and move forward, as James said, they're looking at everything so that when that guidance comes down, we can act quickly and we can act from a standpoint of having firm knowledge on it. Furthering complicating factors include the fact that the guidance from CDC and from the state and other interested agencies or participating agencies is evolving daily. So by getting as much information upfront as we can, then we have a better shot at amending that plan very quickly and moving forward. One of the things that we'll have to watch for is the availability of equipment needed at the polls to protect poll workers and voters. One question that's been posed to me several times, and I'm sure that the rest of the board has probably heard this too, is if we will require people to wear masks at the polls in order to enter. We cannot require it. That's been cited in all kinds of case law, including the Supreme Court. We cannot add an additional hurdle for voters to have to face on election day. So we're trying to come up with ways to also give voters a feeling of comfortableness that we've taken all steps we can to protect their health and safety, as well as the poll workers. So they couldn't come today, but Sheila Davies, we sent her a list of questions, and we also pulled some information from the state. I have printed these out in old people type that we can read. The I've divided the questions up when we sent them over into early voting and election day voting, because there are some differences there that we might need to consider. One thing that is common is that our poll workers rotate positions, so they don't stay at one station the entire time. They have to take breaks, someone else has to step in, and that's important to keep in mind, because one of the things that's being used in the 11th district right now are plexiglass shields like they use in grocery stores and in different places right now to keep some protection between the customer and the person who's waiting on them. So these plexiglass shields will help at the poll workers site when they're issuing ballots. But the poll workers that are doing curbside or going around cleaning stations or dealing with the ballot counter, they are not going to have that same protection. And so we have to make sure that we think those things through and make sure that they're safe too. Another is curbside voting. And that's, in the past, that's been primarily for elderly and disabled, but might have an increase this year maybe for some who don't want to use a mask but don't want to come inside the polling station, and or those that do use masks and because people are going in without masks don't want to enter the polling station. So we'll need to keep an eye on that, and I'm sure that James, Ken, and Jim will have that in their plan, how we can handle an increase. The questions presented to her is, if voters aren't wearing masks, what is the best personal protection equipment for the poll workers who are helping them vote at curbside? Her answer is cloth face mask covering or surgical mask. No N95s. The reason she's saying no N95s, those are the ones used in hospitals, and they're unique in that they protect the person you're talking to, if you have one on, as well as yourself. The other masks don't do that. And but there has been a problem with availability. They're almost impossible to find. And here's one. And they fit your face tighter than a cloth mask. And so that would be ideal, but we will probably never be able to get them. This is not a mask. This covers you. It gives the person you're talking to some protection, and it's better than nothing, but it's really not a face mask. This is a face mask. Inside, there's a place that you can put a filter in. And so that protects the person you're talking to, not yourself. This is a shield, a face shield. And they come in all kinds of shapes and stuff, and they range from $5 to $26 for the ones that you would use at a poll. So there's a wide range in their prices. The NS95 has gone from, I have them at the fire department, they have gone from 55 cents to now they're selling online individually for $5 to $7 a piece. So price gouging certainly comes to mind with me, but who am I to say? This one was made by school children using a 3D printer, which I think is fascinating. And it was given to the sheriff's department, who's loaned it to us for the day. The second question, poll workers during early voting work 4 to 6 hour shifts and are not restricted to the building for their breaks. Some may have difficulty wearing masks for the entire shift due to the sweat and stale air. If they take a break outside away from others, what is an adequate time for them to remove the mask and refresh their oxygen? And at this point, Sheila says there's not been given any guidance on that. So that's something that we'll have to keep watching for. During early voting, most poll workers work multiple shifts, but not every day. Is it acceptable for them to wear cloth masks that they can sanitize each shift by washing it at home? Or should they use N95s, which are only one-time use, and we have no way of sanitizing them? She's already answered that N95 should not be used because of the availability, and healthcare workers have to be first priority. Cloth face coverings should be laundered daily by poll workers. Based on current CDC guidance, cloth face coverings are the recommended mask for the purpose you're describing. Question 4, should poll workers use face shields with masks? And if so, how to sanitize the shields? At this time, Sheila said, Sheila is getting all of her guidance from the state and from the CDC. So that's going to evolve too. But this is the answer for today. The best protection is face coverings, maintaining social distancing, putting up barriers where social distancing cannot be maintained, like a point of sale in retail. It should be ideal for that situation. I also suggest having portable hand washing stations available, and if not, then hand sanitizers readily available. Question: if voters refuse to wear a mask and insist on voting inside, what is the best way to protect poll workers and other voters? Her answer: avoid direct contact by maintaining 6 feet or greater distance, and limit contact to as brief an interaction as possible, 10 minutes or less. This is going to be a great task for our subcommittee to tackle, because it goes into how to get those voters in and out as quickly as possible to try to stay under that 10 minutes if we can. Election day poll workers work 14 to 16-hour days and may not leave the building during a break. What is the best way for them to get a break from wearing their masks so that they can refresh their air, and how often? She has not had any information on that yet either, so hopefully that guidance will come out at some point. Since the day's very busy, I'm not going to read this. This goes back to N95s, and it's still cloth face coverings that are being recommended. Sanitizers are causing issues with ballot reading machines in some voting places. They had a problem, I believe it was in Wisconsin, where the hand sanitizers, people were wearing so much of it that when it gets on paper, it disintegrates the fiber. So when they were putting it in the ballot reading machines, they were jamming because they were becoming mush. So that's something that we may need to keep in mind. Is there an alternative that can be used to protect the voter and also the machines? And Sheila's response is, perhaps you could make arrangements for portable hand washing stations. Excuse me. Realtors are talking about a disinfectant fog that keeps surfaces sanitized for up to 60 days. Would this be an alternative to constantly wiping down everything and reduce the use of sanitizers? Her response: I am familiar with disinfectant fogs that are EPA approved for disinfecting an indoor area for COVID-19. However, I'm not familiar with any of them sanitizing for 60 days. If a fog was sprayed and it disinfected everything, but then an individual came in a few hours with COVID-19 virus on their hands, or coughed, or droplets landed on the machines, I don't have confidence that the information I have seen is that the fog would disinfect the new introduction of virus. The last question: there will be probably an uptick in the number of provisionals and absentee ballots. The envelopes are handled by numerous folks, particularly absentees. Is there a risk of handling these envelopes when they reach the office? And if so, what do we do to minimize it? Her response: current research shows the virus can live on cardboard and paper up to 24 hours. I would encourage waiting at least 24 hours before opening mail out of an abundance of caution. Now, we received these from Sheila on Tuesday, I think it was, or Monday, late last week, in reference to the 11th congressional primary that they're going to hold in June. There was a press release sent out. And this is what the State Board of Elections said in that press release. Masks should be available for all poll workers and voters who do not bring their own. Single-use pens for voters to mark their ballots. Single-use cotton swabs for voters using touchscreen voting machines. Enforced social distancing for all poll workers and voters, including markings of or barriers to prevent voters in line from standing too close together. Hand sanitizer for voters and poll workers. Face shields and gloves for poll workers. Protective barriers between poll workers and voters at check-in tables. Special sanitation kits at each precinct to ensure poll worker protection and clean tables, voting booths, voting machines throughout the voting process. Thorough cleaning of voting sites before and after the election. So those were the answers that we received. When the state does their guidance, we have to follow guidance. There is nothing in statute that means that we can't add to it if we see a unique situation that we think needs a little more protection. As long as that wouldn't be prohibited by law, then we can have our own plan. This is going to be like, every election is a jigsaw puzzle when planning. Usually we're working with like a child's size with 24 pieces. This time we're working on a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and each piece is connected to something else. So each issue that comes up is going to bring more questions and hurdles to clear. So we do hope that the poll workers, think about these things. If you have any ideas, share them with us, and we'll see what's there. Do we want to set a date for conversation with poll workers?
I would suggest we put that in motion and give plenty of notice.
Okay.
There's a webinar this morning that I'm actually missing right now from the state board that may have some more information to give towards where we move forward. They're in the process of questioning and having meetings and such, so I'm hoping I'll have some more guidance as that. So if we'll meet again on the 26th of this month for our regular meeting. So if we can hold off on, my opinion is if we can hold off on scheduling anything so that we don't have something prematurely and then have to come back and say, no, strike that, we can't do that, we have to do this. So I think it's great that we're getting the ball rolling and trying to decide what we're going to do from here and make sure the poll workers and the voters and everyone knows that their safety and health concerns are top priority, as well as getting an election prepared and processed and run smoothly. So I'm hoping that we'll have some information in the next couple of weeks that we can maybe move forward so that we'll have more guidance as to what to tell our poll workers, other than just to let them know that our top priority is to make sure that they're safe.
Okay. A lot of our poll workers work and will not be able to join a phone meeting because they work in the daytime, and at the time we set for a phone meeting, they wouldn't be available. Is there consensus of the board that those that have suggestions might email them to Michelle and we can possibly review them at the next meeting?
Good idea. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Old business. Is there any old business that we need to bring up? New business. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Wait, Ken looks like he was going to say something.
I just was wondering if you want to go over the floor plans of all those buildings, or we wait for that as we continue. We did a whole bunch of building checking, and the reason is if we have to be 6 foot apart, some of our locations aren't big enough. So we contacted the school board, and they will let us use either the auditoriums or cafeterias. So we're now comparing school space with pole space. So if we have to, we can use, like in KDH, if it gets too tight, we can use the school for both Collington and KDH, because they have a gym that's, you know, big enough to put a lot of people in and not get them crushed, so.
Yeah, the gymnasium in KDH should be big enough to take care of KDH and Collington, should we need it.
How many, I think you said you haven't been through all of them yet, you've gone through some of them. How many polling places do you think may need to be changed at this point? Any idea?
We don't have any recommendation at this point. We're just updating you on what we're doing,
Okay.
our plan of action. But at this point, we're not coming forward with a recommendation.
Okay,
We do like 6, takes a day, as you know, the poles are, Dare
right,
County is long and skinny, so we'll do another collection and then we'll come together with a consensus of where we might have some serious problems for space. But until then, we're gonna troop around the countryside.
well, I don't know. I think that this is interesting information, and particularly for the poll workers, but I'm not sure how to present it. I don't know that if I hold them up, it's these floor plans, that it's gonna show anything.
We're really not ready for a presentation at this point. It's just,
I
it is
misunderstood.
only to give you an idea of what we have done and where we're headed. When we have reached a recommendation, we'll come back and we'll present that.
Okay, I misunderstood, Ken. I
Yeah,
thought
these are just for everybody to look at, because if you look at the different drawings that James, we have made, I bring to attention the one for Nag's Head. If you'll notice that it is extremely small, 37 feet by 35 feet, which means that the maximum number of people in the building could be 36 people standing 6 feet apart, maximum number. And that includes poll workers, voters, and whoever else is there. So Nag's Head is a very small location. We wanted everybody to see it, so you could picture in your own mind, 6 foot apart,
Right.
how many people we're gonna have in there. And you have to take our poll workers and say, okay, if we have Till Level Hills, we have 12 poll workers. You have to take that amount of space out of the figure to determine how many voters can be in the building at one time. So we were just wanting everybody to look at it and think and see what we have to work with.
I understand. I had misunderstood, Ken, because you were saying everyone on the board, and I'm thinking this is live streamed. And so I thought that you meant share with everybody. But
I was just showing you what we did and get you aware of the space problems we're going to have, possibly.
well, one of the space problems I thought of driving in this morning are, I think some of our voting booths are individual, but some of them are those round,
They're 3.
they're 3. And
Yeah.
so, that could
Puts
be,
people awful close too.
The kiosks are for voters. And we have the individual suitcase booth that can be placed where we want them to be placed. But the kiosk does have 4 voting booths
Spaces.
within it.
and,
Well, should
and,
we make a plan in the near future to meet again and discuss these after we've done more research? In other words, I'd like to go to the gymnasiums and the cafeterias with James and Ken, like we did before, and make some actual dissertations on what we could do and what we cannot do.
I think that the board is ready to hear whenever you're ready to present.
We'll certainly update at the next meeting, which is later this month.
Right.
That's not to say we'll have any concrete recommendations, but we'll continue to give you updates.
Right. Well, and it's obvious that this is to some degree going to stay kind of fluid until we get all the pieces of this together.
Won't we learn a lot from the June 3rd election?
Yes, the June, you're talking about the one in the
Yeah.
11th district.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll need to watch that one very closely and see where they run into problems. That'll give us some hints.
Yeah.
And,
Good.
yeah, so maybe,
Hopefully there won't be any problems.
yeah, hopefully.
It's a lot of pressure for that district.
But we'll plan on getting together again and do more research and hope we have a meeting towards the end of the month, if that sounds good to everybody.
And we already have that plan on the, that meeting on the calendar.
Then I'll make a
Yes.
motion to adjourn again.
I'll second again.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right.